The courtroom was alive with laughter. Not the kind of laughter you'd hear at a comedy show. This was sharper, colder. Judge Harrison leaned back in his chair, lips curled into a smirk. "Son," he said, tapping his gavel against the desk, "this isn't a school debate club. This is real life." Across from him, standing too small for the defendant's table, was Ethan Morales, 18 years old. His wrists trembled slightly in their cuffs, but his eyes didn't flinch. Accused of armed robbery, accused of a crime that could put him away for 20 years. The prosecutor grinned like the case was already over. The gallery whispered, "Just another lost kid." But none of them knew what was about to happen. None of them knew that in less than an hour, this clueless teen would tear their entire case apart and make the system look at itself in the mirror. Ethan wasn't supposed to end up here. His mother, Rosa Morales, worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night, waitressing by day. She taught him everything: respect, resilience, and the belief that knowledge could set him free. His father? Gone. Left when Ethan was 6. Never came back. By the time Ethan was 12, while other kids were playing basketball, he was reading his mom's old law books she brought home from the office she cleaned. While they memorized sports stats, he memorized legal rights. But life wasn't kind. When Rosa fell sick, cancer, Ethan had to grow up overnight. He watched the system fail her, the hospital denying care, the bills piling up, lawyers shrugging at her case because she wasn't worth enough. By 17, he was alone. No mother, no father, no home. And then, like a curse, police stopped him one night. A liquor store had been robbed. The thief ran into the dark. Minutes later, they found Ethan blocks away, carrying nothing but a backpack of books. Wrong place, wrong time. That was enough. They said he fit the description. Young Hispanic male, dark hoodie. That was all it took. The prosecutor strutted forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, the state will prove that Ethan Morales was caught fleeing the scene of an armed robbery. His fingerprints were found on the counter. A witness identified him. Case closed." The jury nodded. The judge leaned back, already bored. Ethan's public defender, an overworked lawyer juggling 50 cases, whispered, "Just plead guilty. You'll get less time." But Ethan lifted his head. "No," he whispered back. "I'm not guilty, and I'll prove it." The lawyer froze. Then, in a voice that silenced the entire courtroom, Ethan stood and said, "Your Honor, I will be representing myself." The room erupted. Gasps, laughter, murmurs. The judge sneered. "You? Defend yourself? Son, you'll hang yourself faster than I can." But Ethan only nodded. "Maybe, or maybe I'll show you the truth." The prosecutor smirked, starting his slam dunk presentation. "The witness. The cashier saw him. She pointed him out." Ethan stood. "Your Honor, may I cross-examine?" The judge, amused, allowed it. Ethan approached. "Ma'am, how long did you see the robber's face?" "Maybe 3 seconds. And the robber wore a mask." "Yes, but so you identified me from a face you never actually saw?" Silence. Jury shifted. The fingerprints. Prosecutor slammed a folder. His prints were on the counter. Ethan calmly replied, "Yes, they were. Because I bought water at that store 2 hours before the robbery. Did the police pull the store's security? Footage from earlier that night?" The prosecutor froze. "No." Ethan turned to the jury. "So the only proof is fingerprint that I left when I was a customer." "The police report," Ethan asked. "Where is the surveillance video of the robbery?" Prosecutor hesitated. "It was lost." The gallery gasped. Ethan leaned forward. "Lost. Convenient, isn't it?" The fouillette, one piece of evidence that could prove who did it, gone. But Ethan wasn't done. He pulled out a folded paper. "Your Honor, this is a statement from the store's owner. He described the robber as taller than me, with tattoos on his neck. Do I have tattoos?" He lifted his collar. "Skin bare." The gallery murmured louder. "And one more thing," Ethan said, voice steady. "I was in the library at the time of the robbery. I signed into their computer system to study for my GED. Here are the digital logs." He placed them on the judge's desk. The prosecutor's face drained of color. The judge stared at the papers, then back at Ethan. The courtroom was silent. Ethan turned to the jury. How many times has this happened? How many young men locked away, not because of proof, but because it was easier? Because they looked the part? He pointed to himself. I'm not on trial because of evidence. I'm on trial because of who I am and what I look like. The silence was thunderous. Even the judge couldn't mask the shift in the room. Finally, he exhaled. Case dismissed. The gavel cracked down like a thunderclap. Reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed, but Ethan wasn't smiling. Outside on the courthouse steps, a woman stood waiting. It was Mrs. Rivera, his old librarian, the one who always believed in him. Tears filled her eyes. You did it, Ethan. He hugged her tightly. No, he whispered. We did. You gave me a place to learn when the world gave me nothing. Across the street, Judge Harrison stood by his car watching. For the first time, his smirk was gone. In its place, respect. Maybe even guilt, he called out just before Ethan walked away. Son, go to law school. This world needs you. Ethan turned, a small smile on his face. I already planned to. The camera would linger on his face, strong against the courthouse backdrop. The courthouse emptied. But Ethan's fight was only beginning. Freedom didn't erase the weeks he spent in jail. Freedom didn't erase the whispers. That's the boy who almost went away. To the world, his name was now attached to a crime. Even if proven innocent, he walked the streets clutching his backpack tighter, the weight of his mother's memory heavier than ever. Rosa had always told him, Mijo, if the system doesn't work for you, learn it and fix it. That night, Ethan sat in the library staring at a blank notebook. Slowly, he wrote across the first page, The system isn't broken. It's unfinished. It wasn't enough to save himself. He wanted to save others. Weeks later, a letter arrived. In his mailbox, an old dusty envelope with the county court seal. Inside, a handwritten note. It was from Judge Harrison. Ethan, I underestimated you. You reminded me of what justice is supposed to be. I won't undo my mistakes overnight, but I want to offer you something, a scholarship. The City Legal Aid Fund is opening applications. I'll put my name as your recommender. The choice is yours. Ethan's hands shook. The same man who once mocked him was now extending a hand. He thought of turning it down, of spitting on the system that nearly destroyed him. But then he thought of his mom, of Mrs. Rivera, of the kids like him, who didn't have anyone, and he whispered, Yes, I'll take it. The first day he stepped onto the campus, Ethan felt out of place. Students wore polished suits, carried laptops, spoke about internships at firms their parents owned. Ethan wore the same thrift store shirt, carried a beat-up backpack, and worked. Nights mopping floors to pay rent. They laughed when he spoke. They rolled their eyes when he raised his hand. One professor even asked, Are you sure you belong here, Mr. Morales? But Ethan didn't flinch. He remembered the courtroom. He remembered the silence when truth cut deeper than power. Every night he studied until his eyes burned. Every morning he reminded himself, You're not here to fit in. You're here to change it. By his second year, Ethan joined a student legal aid clinic. It wasn't glamorous, no big courtrooms, no cameras. Just small cases, landlord disputes, traffic fines, immigrants fighting to stay. One afternoon, a woman walked in, clutching her daughter's hand. She was undocumented. Her landlord threatened to evict her illegally. Other students brushed her aside. Too complicated, too risky. But Ethan saw his mother's face in hers. I'll take it, he said. In a cramped hearing room, he faced a slick lawyer representing the landlord. Everyone expected Ethan to crumble. Instead, he used the same calm fire that once saved his own life. He cited tenant laws, protections, precedents. Step by step, he dismantled the case. The woman won. Her daughter hugged Ethan, whispering, Thank you, mister. That night, Ethan walked home in tears, not of sadness, of purpose. But not everyone celebrated him. One evening, he received an anonymous message slipped under his door. Stay in your lane. You embarrassed people in power once. Do it again, and you won't be so lucky. At first, he ignored it. But when strangers began watching him outside the library, when his job mysteriously fired him without explanation, when classmates whispered rumors about cheating on exams, Ethan realized the system wasn't just flawed, it fought back. In his final year, a high-profile case shook the city. A teenage boy, 14 years old, was accused of stabbing a wealthy businessman. The media called him a monster. The mayor called for maximum punishment. But Ethan saw something familiar in the boy's eyes on the news broadcast. Fear, helplessness. He visited the juvenile center, sat across from him, and asked, "Tell me the truth." The boy whispered, "I didn't do it. They just said I did." Ethan knew this fight would be bigger than anything before, bigger even than his own trial, because this time it wasn't his freedom on the line. It was someone else's. In court, Ethan stood, not as a defendant, not as a student, but as a legal advocate. The prosecutor smirked, just like years ago. The judge raised a brow, skeptical, but Ethan didn't tremble. He remembered that boy inside himself, the boy who once stood alone, mocked and underestimated, and he remembered what he promised in his notebook. The system isn't broken, it's unfinished. He turned to the jury and began. Years ago I stood where this boy stands, and if you had judged me by my face, by my background, by whispers instead of truth, I wouldn't be standing here today. I'd be gone, forgotten. Do not repeat that. Mistake? The silence was deafening. The jury leaned in. Days later, the jury returned. "Not guilty," the boy cried. His mother collapsed in relief. Reporters swarmed Ethan again. But this time, he didn't walk away. He looked into the cameras, voice firm. This isn't just about one case. It's about every voice that's been silenced, every person written off. Justice isn't about punishment. It's about truth. Years later, Ethan opened his own nonprofit, the Powerless Project. Its mission? To defend the voiceless, to give free legal aid to those forgotten. On the wall of his office, framed in glass, was his mother's apron, her old waitress uniform. Beside it, the notebook he once wrote in, "The system isn't broken, it's unfinished." Every case he fought, every life he touched, was for her, for the boy he once was, for the system he vowed to change, and though the world still wasn't perfect, Ethan Morales had proven one thing: sometimes the most ordinary person becomes the spark of extraordinary change. News outlets began calling Ethan's story the case that woke up America. Law professors dissected his trial in classrooms. Civil rights groups invited him to rallies. But Ethan didn't care about fame. He cared about the kids still locked up, forgotten by a system that had nearly swallowed him whole. One evening after a speech at a community center, a mother approached him. Her eyes were red from crying. "Mr. Morales, my son is only 15. They're charging him as an adult. Please, can you help?" Ethan looked at her trembling hands, at the desperation in her eyes. For a second he was back in that courtroom, alone and terrified. He placed a hand over hers. "I'll do everything I can." That night, Ethan realized his mission wasn't just about speaking. It was about fighting, case by case, person by person, until the system changed. The courtroom emptied, but Ethan lingered. He stood alone. At the defense table, fingertips brushing the polished wood. Once this table had been a prison. Now it was his platform. David Lennox, now gray at the temples, approached quietly. "You've come a long way, Ethan," he said with a proud smile. Ethan nodded. "But the fight's not over. Every time I win, I see 10 more kids walk in." Lennox's eyes softened. "Then make sure you're not just winning cases. Make sure you're changing the system that created them." Ethan exhaled slowly. Those words settled in his chest like a heavy truth. He wasn't just a lawyer anymore. He was becoming something else, an advocate, a reformer. News spread of Ethan's rising career. But with attention came enemies. State hearings, powerful officials dismissed him. "You're just a former delinquent who got lucky," one senator sneered. Ethan didn't flinch. "No, Senator, I was a kid who fell through the cracks you built, and I crawled out so I could close them for the next child." Gasps filled the room. Cameras caught every word. The clip went viral. Supporters cheered, but critics sharpened their knives. Talk shows branded him the boy who beat the system. Others mocked him as the street lawyer. But Ethan stayed focused. He remembered nights under bridges, the echo of hunger in his stomach, the sound of his mother's fading voice. Those memories burned away fear. One evening, as Ethan left his office, a figure waited in the shadows. It was Marco, the boy he once shared a bench with in juvenile detention. "Ethan," Marco said, voice rough. Ethan froze. "Marco, I thought—" Marco smirked sadly. "That I didn't make it out? You're right, I didn't. The streets swallowed me whole." His eyes glistened. "But I saw you on TV, and for the first time I thought maybe I wasn't doomed from the start." Ethan's throat tightened. He gripped Marco's shoulder. "It's never too late. You hear me? Never." That night, Ethan realized his mission wasn't just about strangers. It was about the friends he lost, the voices silenced before they had a chance to fight. But the system doesn't fall easily. A massive case landed on Ethan's desk. State versus Ramirez. A 15-year-old boy accused of armed robbery. The evidence was thin, but the prosecutor pushed hard. "We'll make an example out of him," she declared. Ethan's chest burned with anger. He knew what example meant. It meant sacrificing a child to prove a point. For weeks, he barely slept. He built arguments, dug through files, tracked down witnesses. In court, he thundered, "You want to call this justice? You want to lock a child away for the rest of his life on nothing but assumptions? Then admit it. You don't care about truth. You care about numbers. You care about headlines." "But He slammed his hand on the table. "I care about this boy's life." Silence. The judge leaned forward. The jury watched with wide eyes, and once again Ethan turned the tide. The boy was freed, but the victory came at a cost. Exhausted, Ethan collapsed in his office, clutching his chest. Mrs. Rivera rushed in. "You can't save everyone alone, Ethan," she whispered. "Even warriors need rest." Ethan finally understood. His mission couldn't just be about him, so he started something new. The Morales Foundation, a group of young lawyers, activists, and teachers united to defend children lost in the system. They trained kids in juvenile centers, they funded scholarships, they gave second chances where none existed, and slowly, change began to ripple outward. Courts re-examined policies, legislators faced pressure, communities rallied. Ethan stood before a crowd of hundreds at the Foundation's launch. His voice shook, but his conviction didn't. "I was told I didn't belong in a courtroom, that I was a mistake, that kids like me don't deserve second chances. But I'm standing here because someone, just one person, believed in me. Imagine what we could do if we all believed." The crowd erupted in cheers. Ethan's movement was no longer a dream. It was a reality. Years later, Ethan visited his mother's grave. The wind rustled through the grass as he laid a single white rose down. "Ma," he whispered, voice trembling, "I made it. I kept fighting. And I'll keep fighting. For every kid who didn't have you to tell them they were worth something." He closed his eyes. In the silence, he almost heard her voice again. "Speak the truth, even if your voice shakes." He smiled through tears, because now his voice didn't shake anymore. It carried. The narrator's voice returns for the final lines. Ethan's story reminds us of a truth we often forget. Strength isn't about where you start, but how far you're willing to go. And sometimes the world doesn't change because of those in power. It changes because of those who were once powerless, but refused to stay silent. So ask yourself, if a boy once forgotten by the system could rise and change it, what excuse do the rest of us have? Fade out. Ethan's story is not just a story. It's a reflection, a reflection of the forgotten voices, the faces judged before they are heard, the lives weighed down by a system that too often sees color before character, suspicion before truth. Ethan was just one boy, but he chose not to remain silent. He stood when the world told him to kneel. He spoke when the world laughed at his voice. And in doing so, he proved that knowledge is power, and courage is contagious. But here's the truth. Ethan is not alone. There are countless Ethans walking among us right now, boys, girls, families, waiting, hoping, praying for someone to believe in them. The system doesn't change by itself. It changes when ordinary people refuse to stay silent. It changes when we decide to speak, to share, to act. So ask yourself, if Ethan, a boy with nothing but courage and a dream, could stand and change the course of justice, what's stopping us from doing the same? If this story touched you, don't let it end here. Share it, speak it, carry it forward. Because justice does not begin in a courtroom. Justice begins with us. Fade out with Ethan walking into the distance, notebook in hand. The system isn't broken, it's unfinished. If this story moved you, subscribe to my channel for more powerful stories like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we can carry these voices forward, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.